Fantastic. Well, look, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today on the future of live events. So we have a fantastic panel here today who I'll get to introduce themselves in a moment. So I'm Marion Sudbury from the Department for International Trade. That's my day job, but I also am the non-exec chair of the Bridgewater Hall, which is the venue which hosts the Halle, or the home of the Halle in Greater Manchester. So I've got two different interests in this panel today and in what the audience think. Before I get the panel to introduce themselves, let's find out a bit about who's in here. So could you put your hand up? Or in fact, why don't you stand up? Because we sit too much at these things. Why don't you stand up if you're involved, broadly speaking, in sport? Brilliant. Thank you. I'll get you to sit down. Could you stand up if you're involved, broadly speaking, in music? Great, okay, thank you. Could you stand up if you're involved in something else, like you work for a council or an intermediary who helps others or anything like that? Great, good. So we've got a really good spread of people. That's going to make for a fantastic panel, and we'll make sure that we give you a chance to ask questions. We've had a slight change on the panel because one of our panel members unfortunately had a bereavement, so she couldn't join us today. But Becky, who will introduce herself in a minute, has valiantly stepped in. We're still slightly short on women in terms of balance, so just to give a shout out to the women in the audience, you will get the first questions. First couple of questions from women, please, so sharpen your pencils or your ideas on your questions, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. So, I'm going to now hand over to the panel to each tell you a bit about themselves. Craig.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this. My name's Craig Matthey. Until yesterday, I was the Managing Director of Bournemouth Sevens Festival. So that is the UK's largest sport and music festival, 400 teams playing competitive sport across 7 sports, and 30,000 people enjoying a festival environment around that. So an amazing kind of mix of sport and music, and so interesting to see so many people here. Aside from that, I wear a couple of other events industry hats. I'm the Vice President of the National Outdoor Events Association, which is the UK's oldest trade body specifically for outdoor events. A key advisor to the Association of Festival Organisers, and I know Steve's here today, and also during COVID set up a group called the South Coast Events Forum, which is a group of Dorset, Wiltshire and Hampshire based event organisers, which was set up as a COVID response group but now has more than 350 members. So try and take the work that we do in our particular business and apply it to the broader events industry as a whole.
Thank you, Craig. Becky.
Hello everybody. Yes, I'm a last minute standing, collared in the exhibition hall, but very grateful to be on the panel and to show some of the diversity that we have in our industry. My name is Becky Stevens. I run Hybrid Consultancy. We provide event management and safety for events in the UK. Our clients include Big Church Festival. It's the largest Christian music festival in Europe. Brighton Pride, Luna Ventures, who provide immersive cinema experiences across the UK, amongst many, many other projects.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Eric Stewart. I'm responsible for kidnapping Becky before she even managed to get a cup of coffee this morning. Sorry. I'm the Director of Gentian Events, a specialist crowd safety management company, chair of something called the United Kingdom Crowd Management Association, and also chair of the Global Crowd Management Alliance, which is just coming up to its first anniversary for those that are interested in global crowds and what's happening around the world. And I'm a member of the panel of the board of the Events Industry Forum. And for those of you that know that, we are the group that effectively bully and cajole the rest of you into helping us to write the Purple Guide and the chapters of the Purple Guide. And there's a couple of people in the room who I've cajoled and bullied recently into helping us do that. So if you've read the Purple Guide, then that's where it's coming from. And I just Steve at the back of the room. So thanks, that's me.
Good morning. I'm John Drape. My day job is running a company called Engine Number 4, and we produce music festivals. Our portfolio includes Parklife, Kendal Calling, Blue Dot, Snowbombing, Lost Village, and the Warehouse Project is currently running at the moment. Shareholder of Broadwick Venues Group, a diverse range of venues, Printworks, Exhibition, Magazine, a few of the London-based venues nearer to home, Depot Mayfield. Aside from that, I am a very proud trustee of the Loop, which is the UK's leading drug harm reduction and drug checking charity. And I'm also a patron of Attitude is Everything, which is all about trying to make our music venues and music festivals more accessible.
Great, thank you, John. So, look, Craig, I know you'll be very pleased with this audience because it's a good mix of sport and music. So do you want to talk to us a bit about Sportainment and how that is for, how that's improving the area in the UK?
Of course. And I think, so it's such a privilege to be on such a kind of a panel with such a diverse range of experience. I think one of the things that Bournemouth Sevens does, and it's a proudly independent business, very small organisation, 9 people, but what we have done over the past 15 years since launching in 2008 is really combine sport and music in a way that we think is really kind of cutting edge, and we're seeing it happen all over the country. So sporting events that are adding festivals to the side of them, so think Formula One, think T20 cricket in this environment, and the entertainment that sits around that nowadays. That kind of amalgamation of sport and music is certainly something which is really happening. I think we're going to talk quite a lot today about some of the challenges that the industry faces, and actually I probably wanted to start by just saying we've had a really good couple of years, and we, as a small independent business, managed to just about make it through COVID before delivering a festival in 2021, which was our biggest and most successful festival ever. And actually doing that against the backdrop of not being able to find any staff or stuff was quite an achievement and something that we're really incredibly proud of. The events industry is made up of so many small organisations, and actually seeing the resilience of so many of them to stand up and make it through that was just incredible, and a privilege to see people back appreciating the events industry for what it is, I think. We then spun round into 2022, and with a much shorter period between festivals than we used to, pushed my team right to the very edge again. And I think probably one of the things that I've taken from that is that we as an industry need to be better at looking after our people. We ask an awful lot for them consistently, constantly. There's still an existence of a man-up culture which we need to do something about, of being proud of back-to-back 18-hour days, particularly in kind of the festival world. So we've got a lot of work to do to make our industry better moving forwards, but I think the backstop of that is actually a huge amount of pride at making it through the last few years, and delivering for us our biggest ever event in 2021, and then seeing the events industry back with a bang. People tripling up, doubling up shows last year was just incredible. So I think just setting that tone of actually there is so much challenge on the horizon, and this year has been probably the most challenging year I've ever had in my 15 years in the events industry, but actually we're achieving some great things as a sector as well.
Great. So John, have you seen anything happening in this field, and what do you think is the secret of success in bringing sport and music together?
I think it's been fascinating what's happening in the UK market, certainly over the last 10 years, and the acceleration of sport clubs embracing entertainment, because of course the UK, we've got this incredible production experience, entertainment delivery base here, we've got incredible suppliers, and really sports clubs haven't really embraced it the way that the US market has, when you look at what's been going on for many years around baseball and American football. Including a lot of sports people in the room, so it's not necessary for me to talk necessarily about how sports working, but as a sports fan looking in, I think it's interesting. There's sort of 2 examples where you've got T20 and cricket trying to bring a new audience into the game and using entertainment as a driver for that. So, using that to sell tickets and get a new fan base. And then there's, of course, football, which is a very loyal fan base, and you've got something such as world-beating as the Euros, and football clubs adding entertainment, and that's more about enhancing the fan experience. And I think it is fantastic, and it'd be great to hear from sports clubs about their experience of introducing entertainment and how it works.
Right, yeah. We'll be asking you about that later, so be ready. So, Becky, did you want to comment on that? I mean, John mentioned that we're world leading in sort of this kind of fusion type of activity. Is this something that you're seeing where you work?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, one of the areas that we often work with are fan zones, and so really bringing the sport out of the arena or out of the ground and into the kind of more public interface of From my instance, I'm from Brighton, so it might be Brighton Beach or a city centre or a public square. And it's a really good opportunity to engage with those people who may not traditionally buy a ticket to go to the event or may not be watching it necessarily on TV. So when we have those major sporting events, by tying in that event element to it, we can really engage a lot further with the public, which I have seen is really fantastic. And you get a lot of, with the women's football this summer, it was a brilliant atmosphere we had in Brighton. We had a wonderful fan zone, and we had that engagement with really young kids who then perhaps went on and persuaded their parents to maybe try and buy them a ticket and to really engage with the sport.
Right, so it's bringing new people in. Right, okay, so that's really interesting. So is the consumer experience changing then of things like festivals and in these kinds of entertainment arena?
I would say that it is really important in terms of from a sporting element, we're looking at that kind of different way of engaging with the public on a different level. The whole thing where people want that multi-stimulation experience now. And again, with a festival, people aren't just going to see the band. They want a lot more with that. They want a lot more around that. They want the art engagement, the cultural engagement. They're looking for a talk. They're looking for the food experience as well. So there's a whole, it's not just about turning up now, seeing the thing and leaving. There's a whole bit multi-sensory experience going on.
Right, right. And so, Eric, what's your experience of us being world leading at this? Does it make a difference to you?
It makes a huge difference to me because with my business, I know that we will get called from Australia, from New Zealand, from the US, from Canada. They refer to us as Safety Island, the UK. We're so far ahead of most of the rest of the world in putting on a lot of these events and keeping people safe. We haven't had a major disaster in this country since 1989 at an entertainment event. And that is noted by the rest of the world. We've learned so much from Hillsborough and we've progressed so far from there that we are perceived as being the world leaders. And currently, as things stand, in a somewhat depressing pound to dollar ratio, that makes it good for us as sellers of services overseas. Not so great for them to come over here, but it's great for us to sell those services overseas. But they certainly perceive us. I just want to come back to one of Becky's points there. One of the things I've noticed significantly this year is the need for crowds to have immediate and 100% gratification. They won't wait. They're impatient, they're intolerant. I went to the cricket just recently and sat and watched a really exciting 100. And in the last 7 balls, the family that was sitting in front of me, with 7 balls to go and about 6 runs needed for a win, the family sitting in front of me were all on their mobile phones. 2 of the boys watching football, and what I think were mum and dad, I'm not quite sure, both watching a film. So we've got a really exciting cricket game taking place in front of us, but that's not enough to keep them occupied. They want to watch something else at the same time. And I think for me as a safety person, I've got to be conscious of working with these guys to say, what's next and how quickly can it come on? Because people want it, not in 5 minutes, not in 3 minutes. They want to go from that, which was fantastic, to that, which is even better, and they want it now. And that's a new challenge for us, the speed at which people want their entertainment delivered to them.
Right, okay. So, John, is that your experience too, that people want multiple entertainment really rapidly?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, as Becky says, the music festival of 10 years ago, it simply doesn't exist anymore. And the breadth and depth of content and experience demanded by the consumer, is increasing on an annual basis. And whether that be accommodation on site, whether that be how they interact with the festival in terms of communication and engagement with the festival itself, or whether that is other forms of entertainment. It is not just about 3 or 4 stages, put some bands on and that's it. It is about wellness areas, it's about food, long table dining, talks, workshops, and we're seeing that across the board.
Right, and is there a role for technology in all of that? I mean, does technology make a difference there? Either John or Craig, either of you want to?
Well, I think, tech in a greenfield festival has always been a challenge. And, the technology within our world has always been advanced on the stage. So, video, sound, light, special effects, has raced ahead of any other part of a festival. But since the pandemic, clearly connectivity on a festival site has been quite important from a commercial point of view because everybody's doing contactless payments, so we've had to up our game in terms of connectivity on that angle. Off the back of that, that gives, if you've got a well-connected festival, you can then use that to add CCTV, which, as Eric would tell you, has got an awful lot of advantages when you're running a show, and not just about crowd management, but various other ways that you can use CCTV to give you that intelligence on running a show. But I think the one thing for me personally that has been really well taken up by the audiences recently, and I find is a fantastic tool, is the app. And festival apps have been relatively poor in the past, but now I think we're in a really good place with festival apps. There's really good uptake of the app, and I think the use of an app isn't just about the consumer. From a festival organiser, and from my position, I can find out which stage people want to go and watch artists at, because they'll be planning in the app what they're going to go and see, so that can help us with crowd management. But also it means we've got an effective platform to communicate with the audience. So as I mentioned before, drugs is a threat with a festival. We can put messages out through the app, and it goes directly into people's pockets, whereas in the past trying to communicate on a festival site has been very, very poor.
Right. Okay, that's really interesting. Craig?
Yeah, can I just, one of the things just while everyone's kind of been talking, and the mix of sport and music in the room is really interesting. I think there's so much, and sitting in an event that sits across both, it's kind of a bit of a viewpoint on it, is that the UK festival industry is genuinely world leading. It is standout, it's incredible. COVID taught us that the government has no idea what that industry looks like, how well organised it is, how well respected it is, how many millions of people are attending festivals and how many billions of pounds are spent at festivals each year. So I think there is an awful lot that the sport industry can take from festivals, but I think that the vice versa is true, that the festival industry, Project Restart in the Premier League was an example of just engaging stakeholders, having really high profile discussions, and making the public and government pull along with you. But that was a really kind of consolidated, collaborative approach pulled together by a very professional organisation. I think the events industry and the festival industry is a bit piecemeal. It's lots of different organisations, trade bodies, loads of different groups, an industry made up of really small companies. There are some big players, but not a huge number. So actually, one of the things that is important to the the festival industry and that side of what we're doing is moving forwards, learning how we can better represent ourselves, professionalise ourselves, so that the next time that something terrible happens, we're in a better place to deal with it immediately, rather than needing 2 years to effectively get to the table, I think.
Right, okay, so that's really interesting also. So you said something terrible happening. I know when we first talked, you all kind of mentioned perhaps the most terrible thing at the moment is cost. Do you want to talk to me about cost and perhaps like what's affecting you cost-wise, but also maybe any tips for the audience, any ideas that you've got on what we can do about costs as a group? John, do you want to take that?
I don't have any great solutions at the moment. I mean, clearly it's a massive challenge, from the festival industry point of view. A lot of festivals have struggled with the 2019 ticket hangover going into shows this year. Most people have seen a 20% increase in cost from 19 into this year's shows. Moving forward, we've got at least 10%, if not more, cost increase going into next year. And so, that cost base is not certainly helped by the revenue situation either. It's always been a undervalued sector. The festival tickets have always been too cheap, and I was talking to Steve Heap earlier about this. And trying to get that ticket price correction is going to be increasingly difficult given the cost of living crisis. Glastonbury may have helped us by coming out with a punchy ticket price and getting quite a few headlines and starting that conversation in the mainstream press about the cost of delivering a festival. But I think it's going to be difficult for certain parts of the market next year in terms of achieving that revenue to make it stack up.
Right. I'm interested if anyone else wants to comment on that. And also, for example, is there a way of defraying fixed costs by doing business internationally? You mentioned, Eric, that there are opportunities internationally with the lower pound.
There are for us travelling over and working overseas or selling our services overseas, but trying to buy in anything from overseas at the moment is incredibly expensive. I think the thing I note is that this year has been quite unusual in that we bounced back from COVID in a way that a lot of other industries simply couldn't. And if you compare this gaggle of people that work together for 3 days and then disappear and go and work with another team, they go and work with another team, virtually no linkage, no coordination, but we all just come together and we're so flexible. And we managed to put on, I think it was about 20% is the figure I've heard, more events this summer, including some major events. And we did that without the public noticing much of a deterioration in service. If you compare that to the airline industry, employees of big corporate organisations and how badly they failed when they tried to return at speed to a full service, and they're still not there, and they're still failing in many situations. But this industry came together, put the event summer on, 20% busier than ever, then breathed that huge sigh of relief at the end of August, beginning of September, they sort of got away with it, and then all had to come back from leave in September when London Bridge fell, and this events industry again came together and built the Queen's funeral plans as we'd been doing for the last 10, 20 years. Without the security, without the safety, without the control room staff, without all the kit that put that together, the Queen's funeral would have been of nothing like it was. But I think the anomaly for me, the big anomaly for me in 2022, and we've talked about this previously, is there was a big pot of money in people's pockets that they earned or had through COVID that they couldn't spend. And people were looking for that. I want to get out, I want to play, I want to have fun, and I've got money in my bank that I haven't been able to spend for 18 months or 2 years. I think next year is going to be different, because if they've got any of that left, they're going to be worried about their gas bills, their electric bills, their water bills, their food bills, and I think ticket sales are going to be tricky this year, which, you know, I've spoken to a couple of colleagues already this morning in the security side. Promoters and event organisers don't want to commit yet to signing contracts with security companies, and the security companies are getting nervous. They think they're going to have to put their prices up. And I know we're going to talk about the Protect Duty, but if Protect Duty comes in before next summer, which it should, and it imposes huge additional responsibilities on security companies, watch their bills go up, because they're going to have to.
Do you want to say a little bit about Protect now then? Because then we're going to go to the audience to get some questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good news is that Protect doesn't look like it's going to be anything like as strong as it was. Well, that's good news if you're working in the industry, perhaps, or working for a local authority. It's bad news if you were sitting on the stage next to Figan Murray, the mother of one of the victims, who's been demanding a massive change in what we do and how we do it. And those first reports 2-3 years ago about airport-style security at all licensed premises, which, incidentally, she never said and never supported, but were reported in the media. Had we gone down that route, this industry was going to collapse. Without any doubt at all. We simply cannot put metal detectors at every cinema and every pub and every restaurant. So that view has very, very much softened in government. But I think it's significant that the regular calls that we have with the Home Office over what Protect Duty is going to look like have been cancelled for the last couple of months because they simply can't make progress. They can't make progress because government's in disarray, ministers are changing, but they can't make progress because of the really difficult challenges like what is a competent person when it comes to making a security assessment. They've even talked just recently about a tick box form for a counter-terrorism threat assessment. So if you are a small pub or a small venue, you can just do an A to Z tick box form as to what your risk is. At the same time, having a competent person scheme for terrorism assessments. So that is almost an impossible challenge to overcome. Grey space, last mile, zone X, whatever you want to call it. Who is responsible for that space and keeping terrorists away from that space?
Right.
almost insoluble problem. And there's a lot more to come. There's a lot more issues to come with that yet.
Right, thank you, Eric. Gosh, we're giving people quite a lot of gloom. I hope you're going to say something cheerful now, Becky. Who knows?
No, I'm not, I'm afraid. I agree very much with what the rest of the panel have said. You know, we had an amazing year this year from an events perspective. My company could have worked 4 times over every weekend. We were constantly being called, but that was partly because there's been a huge dearth of experience within the industry. A lot of people did leave the industry and haven't come back. A lot of competent people have moved off into different areas, decided they didn't want to do the 18-hour days anymore, were tired, were exhausted, were fed up of being underpaid. And this year it was incredibly tough because those of us that stuck it out, we worked very long hours, we worked as hard as possible. As Eric said, I had finished my summer run. I thought I was going to have a couple of weeks off, and then, bless Her Majesty, you know, I was called up to do my duty for Queen and Country, and there I was in London in the control room for 10 days. And, you know, but it's due to people like us that we bring those things together. We do step up when it's needed. We do put the work in and the effort. The problem that we've had consistently across this year is the lack of experience at the lower level. We've got a huge problem with the Security Industry Authority and security and stewards. They're not competent. They don't have the event experience anymore. There's a lot of jacket fillers out there, box tickers. It was a real struggle this year, and I'm very concerned that if the Protect duty comes in, we don't have the people on the ground that can help us deliver that. And they are expected to be paid more. And, you know, so then as from an organiser perspective, we're paying out more, but we're getting less, and it's very difficult to deliver.